we were talking about, what were we talking about? We were talking about creatine, and we were talking about molecularized hydrogen for muscle recovery, and Dungeons and Dragons. What else did we talk about?
Oh, you mentioned Catan.
Catan.
Like the board game?
Yeah. And there's like the cities and nights. There's like so many versions.
There's a lot of different versions of that. Yeah.
It's endless.
Yeah.
It's a huge time suck.
I haven't played that yet, but I feel like I have to. We have a couple of board games. We have Horrified and Sorcerer and one other one. But I want to get Hero Quest again. That's like that's like Dungeons and Dragons in a box with pre-made scenarios, pre-made characters and stuff, but a lot of the same rules. But I played Hero Quest when I was a kid, and I want to try that again. There's like 2 or 3 different bosses that are in there. The board is all in there, but yeah,
Dungeons and Dragons is a cult following. I feel like a lot of people are really, you're either super into it or you're just not. I don't think there's an in-between.
Well, because in order to be into it, and it requires a time commitment, and that's what I'm saying, like I haven't quite even started yet, but I always wanted to when I was a kid. I didn't have like access to it. I just thought it looked really cool. This and like LARPing. I wanted to do both of these things when I was a kid, but I didn't have like friends for that. So, but now as an adult, and I have more, time and money, and I don't care what anybody thinks anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, I kind of want to try some of this stuff. Not necessarily LARPing. I don't know if I'll do that.
Yeah.
Because I think I might be able to knock some kids out if I was out there.
That could be fun though. Be good for your confidence. Well, I'm going to give you a brief introduction for people who don't know you.
Sure,
Because you could tell me if this is good or not, but you, Mux Mool, are an electronic musician, producer, visual artist, known for your funky bass-heavy glitch hop. You've been using Ableton Live since version 4, which is pretty sick.
It may have been 4.1, but
yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
You've had music featured on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim since 2008, also on Conan O'Brien. You were an early member of the Pretty Lights band in 2015. Is that right? And then
in the current formation of the band, I was in an early portion of that. Sort of what they're doing now. Derek was trying that out with me and Chris Carnes in 2015 and 2016.
Nice.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would love to have Chris on the podcast too. He's real OG. You toured around the world. You co-founded Super Best Records. Yeah, dude. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Yeah. Glad to be here.
How was your Black Box show? You played recently, didn't you? I was really sad. I was out of town. I wanted to be there.
No, it's all good. It was great. I love Black Box. It's
recorded the Opio episode there once.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah, that was fun.
He's great too. Such a nice guy.
Oscar's the nicest.
Yeah, Black Box is always so great, and the bass I had forgotten, but like was working very diligently on refining my bass mixes for some new songs that I've got coming out that I'm working on, and I'm like gonna premiere them there. And I feel like I did it so well that the whole place was shaking so much that I couldn't even really drum as well as I wanted to, because I was like,
so much bass.
Yes, it's so much bass, but it was really cool.
Good.
I'm really late to this game, but I had my own bespoke visual scenes made by Good King Hippo. He's awesome. Shout out to Wes. There was a lot of premiering happening that night, and so I'm really happy with how it all went.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was loud.
Congrats. Yeah, the sound system at Black Box is some of the best in the city.
Yeah.
For sure, or country. It's been really good.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good bass test for sure.
Yes. So So my take is I won. That was good. Yeah.
Good. That's what you want to hear. So you do a lot of sampling in your tracks. A lot of your stuff is very sampled based. I'm curious, are there any new techniques that you've done in recent years with sampling than what you used to back in the day?
Well, for what it is that I'm sampling now, and I've used fewer samples these days, and I use them differently. In terms of sampling over the years, we're talking about, 27 years since I started now. So feelings about sampling and where samples come from has changed again to where we are currently at, but originally back in 1998 till around mid 2000s, you had to go buy records and you had to record those samples yourself, and then you had to arrange them and all this, and there was a little bit more of an ethos around sampling at the time too, because you were taking something from, you're talking about recording a band that has professional players, people who were, piano players, drummers, and guitar players, and bassists, and, whatever. that was their whole life. Then they record a song, and you're taking a portion of that and you're calling it your own. So your use of that sample should honor the creativity that they all put into that, because then you're calling it your own, and it shouldn't be so much theft, because sometimes there is, people are just like Googling, looking on YouTube for literally looking up obscure funk samples and then just ripping it and using whole sections of that, like in songs. And it's like, that doesn't seem right to me,
That's kind of the flip era we're in right now, where I think everybody's doing flips.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And I just kind of feel like you should honor some of that. And also, if you could find something crazy while digging, and that was the other thing, is that the focus was also on the fact that you are going out, you're supporting record stores by buying vinyl, and you are listening through lots of things. You're learning how to see what's interesting. So the availability of samples these days is very different. And I'm not saying it's good or bad or whatever. It's just that's how it was back then.
Sure.
And so there's a lot of things that I learned by going through and listening. Like, when you look at the back of a record and you see what the band looks like or their artwork or whatever, what's maybe going to have something cool in it, maybe what's not. Because I definitely bought a lot of records that I thought would be so cool because the artwork was so cool, and then it's
sound like hot trash.
Yeah, right. And then really humble black and white photography with some nerdy looking guys, and my God,
yeah,
could not believe these weird drum breaks. And then also you had to record those, yourself, which before the advent of universal serial bus, it was a little harder to get music from the record into a computer to start sampling it. So there were a few more steps, and then once you had it in the computer, chopping it, moving it around, changing it, these are all, a little more complicated. So if you could get something all together and be able to have it in a place where you could start chopping it up, that was already like a lot of steps,
Yeah. Quick question. I don't want to interrupt you,
Yep.
but do you think that people are becoming more creative or less creative or about the same because there's an option overload now with Splice and with so many sample libraries online that you're not having to go and crate dig and find samples to rip that you probably would manipulate differently because it's not completely packaged as a short 4-bar loop or something for you? What do you think about that?
The availability is not necessarily a bad thing. And, the availability of tools and stuff, because that's something else that comparing from how it was in the year 2000 until now. The other thing is, if it wasn't a good recording of, say, a drum break, you had to kind of make it better. You had to already do your own EQing and stuff. Yeah. And that took me a long time to really learn, because you could feel the energy of a break, but it wasn't, EQ'd properly. Things are much higher fidelity now.
Oh, for
as
sure.
soon as you download them.
100%.
The creativity when going through like Splice samples is sort of like a Rick Rubin thing, where it's like your taste is what matters here.
Yeah.
You being able to identify this is what's cool out of this set or whatever. So that was also what sampling records was. You're like, I know this is cool. And you're just hearing it for the first time, but I know this is cool. So the fact that it was harder to get doesn't necessarily mean that the activity is any different. But that being said, some of the availability or some of the, utility that Splice offers for someone who's looking to maybe just get by, you could be a lot less creative if you wanted to and still have a product that sounds pretty good. And some people choose to go that route. I use Splice. I go to Splice for, sometimes little ideas for patterns. I mean, it's funny because I mostly go for percussion loops. I'm just like, I need something to just bring all these things together, like conversely, like I need something that has the groove that I'm looking for, so I can write everything else to it. I don't like the metronome in Ableton. I don't like that sound. I don't want to.
Well, you've got different sounds now. I think in 11 you could choose like 4 or 5 different sounds.
Right.
I like the wood personally.
What's that?
I like the wood block is kind of my thing.
But I prefer to just put something, like a shaker in there that really has,
sure, my
shoulder feelings in it, like.
My friend went into the script in Ableton and kind of hacked it and replaced the metronome with his fart sounds.
There you go.
Like he farted into the mic and replaced the every time he just turns it on, it's just like a...
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, that was his thing.
Yeah, you can do that.
Definitely, I agree with you about what you're saying. There's things that are really nice. I use Splice too, about like there's so much new stuff coming out. It's like almost just like option overload. There's just so much out there.
Yeah.
It's almost sometimes harder when you have more options. Which
Yeah,
is like
absolutely.
just finding something to create on your own completely from scratch.
Well, and it's I can't remember the whole analogy, but it's the whole it's something about the goat herding theory where it's like
Oh,
someone
yeah,
so
yeah.
you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah.
So how much do you want to break down your roles as a musician? Are you making your own
Right.
snare drums out of wood and like whatever? Are you raising the goats? It's like no. So how far back do you really want to go?
Exactly.
And for a number of things where the shaker could be a little bit like this, or a little, or a tambourine could be a little bit like this, we're kind of splitting hairs on whether or not that is the most original thing. But what you do with it, I think, makes a big difference. Creative people are always going to find creative ways to use whatever tools are available to them. And I think the availability is good. Of course, if I had just, if I was 16 years old right now, I would start with Splice. They just didn't have that.
Yeah, no, it is definitely convenient. Have you played with the newer co-producer by Output?
No.
So it's kind of like a LLM had a baby with Splice. You can make it listen to your project, and then it'll recommend samples based off of what it hears.
Interesting.
But then it also has a chat. So you could say, I want some funky death metal guitar sample that like also is country rhythm or something, like whatever.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't know how accurate that would be, but like
It'll generate something for you?
It doesn't generate, it just pulls up samples from Output's library.
Okay.
And I think they just partnered with a bunch of other sample library companies too to expand that.
Wow, that's
so that'll be interesting. Yeah, I think that's the future of crate digging, is you're going to have almost like a chat GPT generated thing that you just type and prompt, or you have it listen to your project and it's going to recommend based off of tempo and key and all the other things. That's coming pretty soon.
And I have a friend who he's which I thought was interesting. He's taking his own songs and putting them into I can't remember the name of the AI program. I have a link on my computer, but
there's so many out there.
Suno, maybe?
Yeah, Suno AI. Yeah.
Putting his own music into Suno and then having it spit back a song that sounds like him to see if it works. I thought that was pretty interesting. I might check that out.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I just got like an NFR for Suno. I need to spend more time with it. Flostradamus, Kurt, and I have been texting back and forth, and he's heavily involved with them as a partner.
Okay,
so they're rolling out some really new, exciting stuff. I don't know if I could say yet, but the Suno's definitely crushing.
Yeah, it seems like sometimes with the advent of AI, like if someone listens to like a Mux Mool's Spotify recommended channel, it'll be like me and other people that sound like me, but eventually it'll just be like me and then a bunch of AI generated music that AI thinks sounds like me.
Yeah. And I talked about this on the podcast before, but I'm excited with the advent of AI, and people are worried about it's going to take jobs and creativity away. I'm in the opposite camp. I think it's actually going to fuel more creativity, because people are going to make music that we've never heard before, and they're going to be forced to like get outside the box because stuff is going to start sounding all the same, and so they'll be using it to their advantage to make new stuff.
I have been making computer music for so long, and I had so many peers and people telling me that what I was doing wasn't music because I was making it in a computer. I faced that forever. And then when you look back even further, it's like they said that about, rock and roll.
Yeah.
That's not music. It's just hooks or whatever. And even before that, if you go way back, they didn't think the piano was a real instrument because you didn't have to learn how exactly to play the note. It's like people just want to say that.
That's true.
And whatever, and also there are times when there's advents in technology. Like when I first started releasing music, everybody was torrenting, and people wanted to ask me how I felt about that. And I was like, it doesn't really matter how I feel. We're already here. Like, and if people want to have my music for free, I want them to have it for free. So I'm just, I'm fine with that. So we'll see. Yeah.
Shout out to Alberto. He was on the podcast. He's like the sales director for the US of Ableton. Was talking about how his first version of Ableton was a cracked version.
Yes, same here. I used a cracked version until I could afford it, but I've paid for it ever since.
There you go. See, you've arrived.
Yeah.
100%. I am curious, like you've been using Live since before I have. I jumped in at the beginning of 8. And I like asking people this question because it's fun for me. But like, Are there any features you wish the Ableton Live had now that don't exist?
What was I saying earlier?
There's always something. There's always one thing.
Oh, yes, that was it. Yeah. Every time I pull in a new audio clip and it tries to quantize it, and I don't understand the way it chooses the transients. It feels like chaos to me. Whereas in Serato and stuff like that, I feel like it's right on. And the only feature that I wish it had was the Serato algorithm for deciding BPM and stuff. I wish that was in there sometimes.
Are you in 12?
Yeah, 12.2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they did update the warping algorithm going into 12.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see what you mean. And you can turn off auto warp long samples in the preferences.
Yeah, and I've changed it around. I've changed it around, and it's still like every time I put it in, I'm like, that's just not quite right. And a lot of stuff that I'm putting in is like, if I'm building my set, it's my own song. I'm like, I already made this in Ableton. You should know.
Yeah. But, you always have to set that BPM first.
Right.
That is a thing. Yeah, it's real hit or miss. I feel that. I hear that too.
Yeah.
I've got a huge laundry list of things. This is the Ableton podcast. Let's just shit on it for the next 35 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. No, I love Ableton, and
of course,
super innovative. It's a great company. I love you guys. But yeah, it was, one thing I was talking about, because the Pretty Lights roots and stuff, I was talking with Adam Deitch and Borum Lee. Borum was talking about one thing they struggled with in the band as of like a year ago is having Link be able to have one computer as the master and then let all the other computers follow one as a master tempo.
Yes, right.
Which I'm just blown away. That hasn't been a thing yet.
Yeah.
It would be so nice.
And I'm sure Chase talked about this too with some of the heavy, like what they have to do, the external clock that everything else has to follow, whereas one computer running Ableton should be able to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that hasn't come up for me because this is just me with my computer, but that totally makes sense that it should be able to
have a master and then everything follows.
Because I've done link jams with other people too, and it's fun, but then also it lines it up weird too. And I'm like, why? It's the should be pretty clear what we're trying to do here,
Yeah.
But yeah, you'll be like you'll be hearing the count, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then record something, and then when you look at the waveform and you're like, that didn't start on 1, even though I'm following this other. Yeah. Anyway,
interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if that has anything to do with like the local network they're using, because like sometimes people try to do that over Wi-Fi, and I was like, no, I want like an actual custom.
Oh, you're doing it like hardwire?
Yeah, hardwire.
Oh, okay. I've only ever done it over.
Yeah. I feel like that's
Wi-Fi.
More safe and consistent. And the times
always.
I've used it, I would always recommend to do that, especially for a live show. 100%.
Yeah.
Never trust the venue's Wi-Fi ever.
No.
That makes me nervous. I saw people do that recently at a big show, and I was like sweating for them. I was like, I don't know about this, dude.
Yeah.
Any other like new tech that you've discovered or seen or thought was interesting?
So I've been doing a collaboration with a guy in the UK named John First, who's a DMC champion scratch DJ and producer and friend of mine, and he and I have been using Muse.
Yeah.
That has been amazing. That has made collaborating overseas a reality, and not just a reality. Like, it's super easy.
Yeah.
For us to talk to each other, to send files to each other. For me, it's so crazy to think he can have MIDI enabled. I have my keyboard in front of me, and he has a synth pulled up, and I say, "Stop! Let me play this part." I play on my keyboard, and it goes all the way across the seas and plays on his computer. It's obviously this latency, but the fact that I can do it at all is incredible.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The latency's getting better, too. When I played with it with my friend, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's not my wheelhouse, but like, it is interesting. I did talk to somebody at a company in Ableton Loop 18, whenever it was in LA. And he said that he had a government patent for 0 latency online. I don't know what he's doing with it right now, but I think that's actually going to happen. Which is
exciting.
Pretty crazy to think about.
So now you can get on Splice and download all of it, every loop, in 2-3 minutes. Have everything on your infinite hard drive, your quantum computer. Yeah.
Yeah. Muse is cool though, and I think
Yes, I love Muse.
they're rolling out a bunch of different features other than just remote collab right now. I think.
And it was funny because I learned about Muse because I think it's the same developers as Discord. I think
really?
well, I think the same utility is in Discord. It's just not as immediately obvious, but this is clearly made for two people to open up their DAW, talk to each other, and make a song. So
yeah, it's pretty well done.
yeah.
As far as like Ableton Live stuff,
Yeah.
you make a lot of funky, bassy, sampley, glitch hop stuff. Can you share any specific Ableton Live technique that you typically use in every project you think that other people might find interesting, or
That's
any workflow?
That's tough because my process is and is not dialed in. And it's so funny because I think I could save myself a lot of time if I had a more consistent, workflow thing. But every time I get in there, I just see where it goes. So like my what is it? My template set is like I don't have anything in there. So every time I start from scratch every time.
Yeah.
There are places that I end up getting to a lot, and one of the things that I use a lot of is when you in the sample editor, and you can adjust the time on the transients and how it plays. I do a lot of work with that to get interesting stuttering rhythms and stuff.
Like the warp modes?
Yeah, the warp modes. Yeah. Put a lot of it, just, a lot of things in on transient, and then I shorten them to get them, beep, 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 beep.
Yeah.
I do a lot of that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much in everything that I do because I just like the way that sounds.
Yeah. Same. That is fun.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to like tighten the sustain of like hi-hats or percussion in beat mode.
Yeah.
You can pull that transient back and stuff. Yeah. I've been playing a lot more with like stretching vocals. If you just like hold like shift command option or something, and you just click the end of the clip and drag it out.
Yeah.
And then changing it to like texture mode or like a tone mode, and you just get some weird kind of like artifacts.
Add reverb.
Yeah.
Reverse it.
Yeah.
Freeze it. Yeah.
Some really cool textures and like pads out of vocals that way. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know I love caffeine. I'm a caffeine addict, but I definitely feel the crash and some of the jitters and negative side effects that come with coffee and caffeine drinks, which is why I'm in love with Magic Mind. Since they sent me some free samples a couple years ago, they have this new natural time-released caffeine, and basically instead of that typical spike that you get, their caffeine is time-released, so it gives you steady energy all day without that bad crash that we all feel. It also includes important things like nootropics, adaptogens, antioxidants, and things that make your body really happy. They have some new blends that I really love. They have their original, which is the golden yellow kind. They have the calming free blue and green label, and then they have the strong one, Max, which is a bold red color. For me, I love all three, depending on what vibe I'm going for that day. I have friends who are really sensitive to caffeine, and they love the free version. When I'm grinding on a project in the studio, need to knock out some stuff, I go with the original or the Max to help me get through the day and accomplish all these things without feeling the anxiety or that crash. If you're like me and you are busy and you demand natural energy, definitely give it a try. Right now, Magic Mind is offering 60% off your first subscription, which is a killer deal. Just go to magicmind.com/AbletonPodcast60 or check out the link in the show notes and use the code AbletonPodcast60. Use that code, get 60% off your first subscription. All the guests that I've shared this with on the podcast love it. We're all obsessed. Always looking forward to the next shipment that Magic Mind sends me. You have nothing to lose. Check it out. Take advantage of this deal, and I know that you're going to love it too.
I had a granulator that I paid for before Ableton had a granulator synthesizer, in there. And actually, that's another thing that I do a lot of is I'll quantize a whole song that I'm trying to sample, and then just drag the loop around, just cut it real short, and you just drag it through the song. Or put it on like 1.1 measure or whatever, like so that it gives a bit of a triplet feel.
Yeah.
And then just drag that around until you find like interesting parts. I do a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, JP from Slam Academy had a fun hack similar to that, but he would just drag the sample or the track into Simpler.
Yeah.
And then you just macro map, I think, at the start position. And then you can have it like move around.
I've seen
and you
that.
automate that, and you can just have it jump around.
Because you can just have it automate like from beginning to end in one clean line, and then have that jump around.
Have it move around real weird. Yeah, that's fun. As far as like your live visual stuff, you have a background in visual arts. Like, what tools do you typically use for that?
Oh, so drawing is completely different for me. Like with music, it's a lot of technical work, but with drawing, I've just always been a massive doodler. But I went to arts high school for that, and I was
professional doodler.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I was going to grow up to make comic books. I thought I was going to be a pencil artist for Marvel. That was like
that's cool.
My plan, So if you want me to draw you like all the muscles and veins in like the Hulk, or like Spider-Man, Wolverine, Jean Grey, I can do all that.
Nice.
But that's just sort of a completely analog thing without. There's no plan for that. I just draw just for myself.
Yeah.
But that was where I learned, that like 10,000 hours like idea. Like I put so much into my drawing until it got to a point where I knew it was good. And that was the first time I knew that I was good at something was with drawing. So with music, it came a lot later. Because, I started in 1998, made my first song on a computer in 1998, but I didn't put out my first song until 2006. So that's 8 years of just experimenting and not knowing, there was no career plan. I mean, that I was just putting songs on MySpace.
Yeah.
There was
what DAW was that in 98? What DAW were you using in 98?
So in 98, it was Acid 3.0.
Nice.
On a Dell computer, which, it's just some loops and a couple like samples from The Simpsons and time stretching was really horrible, and putting together little things, and I but I got into. I was so into it because, and what's funny is that like one of the things that got me into electronic music was actually just an interest in computers, because I could just be by myself, and it just felt like a whole world.
Yeah.
To myself, moving things around and customizing, and the potentials just felt crazy. And I could be a whole band. I didn't have to, collaborate or anything. I could do it all in the computer. And so I got very into that.
Cool.
And so Acid 3.0. And then I went on to samplers, and it was ASR 10, which complicated way of sampling. You had to get all of your sounds and all your effects and your entire arrangement on a, floppy disk, which has, just a couple megabytes on it. So that's really crunching time.
Yeah.
And then eventually Reason 3.0.
Okay.
And then, but once I got into Ableton at 4.1 from a demo disc from like PC World magazine,
nice.
That was it. So been there ever since. Yeah.
So do you take a lot of your drawings ever and use them as visuals for your shows?
No. So it's happened like that a couple times where some VJs have wanted to use some of my visual art for live shows, but I don't animate them that well. Okay. Or I mean, I don't animate them at all. I just draw them, and they just sort of are there. And
have you ever used like any AI tools to make it come to life?
No, but that's an interesting idea, because it could happen now. Yeah.
It'd be fun to see what that would look like.
Yeah.
There's weights.com. And I've used that to turn my album art into an actual short video.
Yeah.
It's only up to like 8 seconds right now, I think. But it is really good. It's surprisingly pretty good.
And I've had album artwork based on my drawings and stuff. My first album, based on my art, there are, it's there in different ways, but I always work with someone else on designing album artwork, because I'm not myself a graphic designer. Like I can doodle or whatever, but it
saves you time too if you're really trying to put a release out. Like, that's a lot of work. You got to be the marketing guy. You got to produce. You got to mix, master. You got to visuals, all that stuff. Yeah. It's
hype man.
Yeah. Exactly.
Singer.
Professional hype man, marketer, business strategist. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Are you still doing anything with Super Best Records?
No. No, I'm not sure what the state of Super Best Records is, but, that was something that Michael Menner and I did when I first came out to Colorado, and he and I were living together and wanting to have a project and, a label project, and taking my experience working with Ghostly International, everything I had learned from them about how a record label can or should maybe work, and trying to implement that to help protect, some of the younger artists we were working with, which was Late Night Radio, Matty O'Neill.
Yeah.
And
they've all been on the podcast. I love them.
Yeah. So we were working with them, saw the potential in them. We also, DMVU, he was on our Super Best shows at One Up when they had a venue space. Those shows were awesome. I'm not sure what Michael's doing with it now. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure he's pretty busy.
Yeah. I'm sure he's pretty busy too. I know he's busy, but yeah. I still see the shirts every now and then, and I love it.
Yeah. It's a little memoir.
Yeah.
As far as your live sets, maybe we can nerd out a little bit on that. Like
Sure.
maybe the black box or any other setup you've had. Like, what does that look like?
So my setup right now is obviously Ableton.
Yeah. Shout out.
Yeah. Shout out to Ableton. I have Machine Mark III. And that is my sound card and drum pad. And then I have the Keith McMillan, rest in peace, Keith McMillan, Cuneo.
Okay.
And that controls parts of my session. So that's, high pass, low pass, some of the speeds of some of the beat repeats, and some sound effect controls that I have in there. I love the Cuneo. A lot of people think it's kind of an awkward thing. I love the Cuneo because every pad is touch sensitive and an XY pad. It's super durable. It has never failed me. The customizing has always is like, you can change so much. You can make this thing do so many things, and it's excellent and reliable. And Machine Mark III, just buttery pads, really responsive drum pads. And I do a combination of controlling the session and mixing, and then live drumming, unquantized with the machine.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at this, what is it, the Cuneo?
Yeah, Cuneo.
Cuneo MIDI controller.
Yeah, I really like it. I've had 3 of them.
Yeah, man, it reminds me so much of, and I'm drawing a blank right now. I might have to edit this, but the really flat MIDI controllers that you could just like customize and lay them anywhere. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
They're really
yeah.
thin.
What was that called?
Damn, that's driving me nuts.
Yes,
Dude.
yeah.
And I don't think they make them anymore either.
Right.
I want to say soft.
It's so funny. It's like we know that the company was here and is out of business. But
yes, they were. Oh shit, that's gonna drive me nuts.
Yeah.
It's like right there. Anyway, it looks like that. It looks so much like that.
And I've always really liked the Cuneo. And for a long time when I was touring, I was playing with a Akai MPD 32, which has faders and knobs on it, but I had to go through airport security constantly. And this thing, you're pulling it out of your bag, you're putting it back into your bag, and those faders are just made to fail.
Yeah.
Not solid whatsoever.
Yeah.
So that just became unsustainable at a certain point, because I'm like, I'm buying 2 of these a year just because I have to take them out of my bag and use them. So when the Cuneo came around, it's a little harder to, use some of the controls on there, but they've never broken, and they never give false MIDI signals. They never, glitch out. And so yeah, I'm a big proponent for Cuneo.
Stencil Morph. That's what.
There we go. Yeah.
Stencil Morph pads. Yeah, those things were really cool. You can just like change them out, and you just had this little MIDI pad, and you can just change the top so it'd be whatever you wanted it to be. Yep. Those are really cool. There's the Intech Studio now. Have you seen those? Mm. It's like the magnets MIDI controllers are little ones, and they either come with like knobs or faders, and you can.
Oh, and you just click them together.
Modular MIDI controller thing. Yeah, I'm trying to get my hands on those because I've been seeing more and more of those. This seemed really cool, and you can really customize and go into like the app and change it.
The first time I saw something like that, I saw it, and it was for photo editing stuff. I thought it was really funny because I'm like, this feels more musical than it does. Like, do you really need a big knob for saturation?
Yeah,
for editing photos. I mean, I'm not, not knocking photo editors. I'm sure there's a whole process there too.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is clearly musical.
Yeah, definitely feels. I don't know. There's something about being able to physically touch the music you're making that it's a better experience for me. Just you feel more a part of it.
Yeah.
Your setup, are you doing anything with visuals then at all on your end, or do you have somebody just running it for you and improvising?
Up until now, or up until recently, I've always just relied on, whatever the venue is providing, or whatever. I've worked with a bunch of video artists, over time, but in the last year or so, again, working with Good King Hippo, to develop my own live visual elements that I'm really excited about. It's all low poly, like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 type graphics of me.
Love that.
Lots of different scenes that are fun and, video gamey, which, he totally understands my aesthetic. And so I'm excited about the future of that for myself. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always really fun too. It adds a lot to the show when stuff is just like well prepared as far as the production side.
Yeah.
I think it's depending on the show and the gig. For me, it's like equally important as even just the music.
Well, and I'm not, it's hard for me to say this, but I'm not like really trippy. And like what I'm making isn't exactly trippy, but then there are a lot of sometimes live visuals and some of these live performances lend themselves to being sort of trippy.
Yes, I see that a lot.
And that can, if the audience enjoys it, that's great. But for myself, I can't honestly curate something like that because it doesn't feel authentic to me.
Yeah.
So I want to tell a story or have, in this case, a bit of a sense of humor, show a little bit of myself.
Yeah.
But it took a long time for me to get to that point where I said, yeah, I really actually do want to do this. Because as beautiful and colorful as, let's say, fractals and lasers together in going in all directions, or whatever, I'm not saying that's not beautiful. It just feels there's no story there. And I would rather there be more of a conscious curation for what I'm doing, because there is with what I'm making.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I 100% agree. I think they should be locked in, like hand in hand. I've been to a lot of shows where I'm like, I'm going to have a seizure. This is like there's so much flashy stuff going on a big screen. It's just like, what are we doing?
Yes.
Yeah. That can be, I think it's definitely valuable to find somebody if you have the opportunity to use a venue that has like an LED wall or something that it's locked in, or find somebody who fits your style, who knows what you're going for. And
yes. And I finally did. Maybe that was the missing piece all along, is I didn't have Wes.
Nice.
Now I do.
Now you do. Happily ever after. Other people listening to, like having like some assets, like downloadable assets on a flash drive, even if it's somebody last minute that's running the visuals at the venue you don't know.
Yeah.
Just like give them downloadable short video files of exactly what you're wanting. That way they can get a vibe. That's definitely, I think, a tip for some people.
As opposed to, I've definitely sent them a transparent version of my logo a number of times, and
100%.
It'll that's great too. There's nothing wrong with that. I just there could be more.
Yeah, and a lot of times they like that too.
Yeah, because
it's like, oh, this is what the music style is going to be played, and I want to match that anyway. So it's like, and it gives them more just to play with than all the content they already have. So it's like,
and one of the biggest bummers for me also has been, it's like I never get to hear one of my songs for the first time, because by the time it's out, I've already heard it 8,000 times.
Yeah.
But I don't get to see the visuals of my own show because they're behind me.
That's true.
People be, the visuals are so great. I'm like, cool. I believe you. I haven't seen them. Thanks, though.
That's true. That is true. That's funny, man. So I know we're getting full on time. I
got all day.
Okay, cool. On Charlie, we're gonna spend the night. Is that okay? Okay, sweet. Thanks. Perfect. So, what advice would you give to yourself like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when you were starting to like pursue making music, playing shows? It could be performance, it could be production, like anything that sticks out. You're like, man, if I could go back in time and tell myself this, what would it be? It's a hard question.
Just do a little bit each day, as opposed to trying to do 14 hours straight and then 2 weeks of none at all. I did a lot of that, and it did not produce better results. It felt a little bit better to be like, I'm in it now. I'm really doing it now. But like, if you work on music for 2 hours a day, even every other day, that gets a lot more done.
It's a lot.
And I wish I would have learned that sooner, because although it doesn't feel like those hardcore cramming, studying sessions or whatever that I used to have, the results are better, cleaner, and actually there's just been more music that way. And it took me a long time to figure that out. That and eat better when you're on the road.
Yeah, that's a hard one, especially if you're like touring the Midwest in the middle of nowhere. It's like we got Wendy's, we got Arby's, we've got Hardee's, and that's about it. Yeah.
Gas station egg salad, there you go. Things like that. So when I tour now, or when I play shows out of state, I get there, I get to my hotel, I go to the grocery store.
Yeah, smart.
And I get
that's the move.
Groceries.
Yes.
And it's still like hummus, pita, cooked chicken, or, grapes or vegetables or whatever, some of the stuff will be in the green room, if, whatever. But, so that way I know that if I don't get a meal before going home or going back to the hotel at 2 a.m, at least I have that.
Yeah.
That it's clean and that I can eat it. That is so much more satisfying than just accepting whatever. And you also want to eat regional foods too,
support local.
You don't want to have to rely on that, because if I have to eat buffalo wings to survive, that's going to kill my stomach.
Right.
Every night. Try a little bit,
That's good advice. So from what I hear is just do a little bit, as much as you can, and that adds up to a lot over time.
Yes. And consistent effort over time, as opposed to just big, fierce runs. Yeah.
That makes sense. And don't eat shitty garbage food on the road.
Yeah.
That's good advice. I would take that for sure. Yeah, I think like the hardest part is just even showing up. Like you've got these maybe big goals in your head, and like I like the concept of thinking of where you want to be and working backwards. And sometimes it can be overwhelming for people starting out. I know it was for me when I first started producing. It was like, okay, I want to release an album, and that's going to be a lot of work. And people just kind of get overwhelmed with the thought of that, and then they get distracted, and they don't actually put in the little bits of time that add up to being a finished goal. That could be really tough.
Yeah. And if you're doing it one step at a time, you'll get there.
Yeah.
Because that's when I first started out with releasing music, and again, it was a very different world then. But my first song that I ever released, which I was found on MySpace, and it was somebody from Ghostly International who liked the song and wanted to put it on a compilation. And then that song went on to be one of iTunes' best electronic songs of 2006. So all of a sudden, there I was next to Justice and Flying Lotus and other people, where I was like, I made it sitting on one chair while my computer was on another chair. Like there was no desk, there was no speakers, just, like whatever. I didn't know where it was going, but I kept steadily working on it and just continued to ask questions. And so at the time, at the very first, onset or whatever, it was just a little bit of work every day. Then I got into the bad habit of just trying to do marathons all at once. But now I'm back to just a little bit every day.
Yeah. Just put in the time in little chunks and adds up.
Yes.
Yeah. That's good advice. I like that. Good stuff. I usually finish the podcast episode by asking Abe. He's my Ableton AI chatbot that I trained on the podcast and all the manuals and all my favorite things. So if you had to ask Abe a question, what would the question be?
So I was curious about this because I'm not, I didn't know how your chatbot was working yet, but what I wanted to know is,
because we talked about this before he was made. This was like a year and a half ago. I was brainstorming with you about this.
Yes. Yeah. Because I love the idea of being able to just be like, how do I, for people who are, they don't know why their thing is not working.
ChatGPT is great for that too. Like I use it all the time, but this is more tailored, I guess, to me and the guests personally.
I wanted to know if Abe had any suggestions for what does Abe think the best mastering chain on the mastering channel, on the master channel would be. What does Abe think that is?
That's a good question. I don't think anybody's asked him that. He's probably going to give some general response, like what style or whatever. So if we could be more specific, that might be better. So like, what is the best mastering chain on the master channel
for bass music
specifically?
Yeah.
And
I was just curious because
music, aka dance music. And do we want to use native Ableton Live stock devices? Or
yes.
Should say Ableton Live to be a PC. Because Ableton's the company, Live is the software.
Yes.
For anybody who didn't know out there. All right, here it is.
Does Ableton have any other products other than
Yeah,
that?
they have so they have, I mean, Link is technically a product.
Oh.
The Push, the Move.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, the Live is the software.
Right.
But yeah, that was like drilled into our heads when we were in Ableton certification. Okay, creating a mastering chain for bass or dance music in Ableton stock devices involves a combination of effects to enhance the overall sounds. I'm going to summarize. Suggested mastering chain for bass music, EQ8. Use EQ8 to clean up any unwanted frequencies, roll off the low end below 20 to 30 hertz to remove subsonic rumble, blah, blah, blah. Multiband dynamics. Use multiband dynamics to control the dynamics of different frequency bands. This can help tighten the bass, control mids, and add presence to highs. Adjust the crossover points to suit your track. Saturator. Add a saturator to introduce harmonic distortion and warmth. This can help add character and presence to the mix. Use it subtly to avoid unwanted distortion. Compressor. Use a compressor or glue compressor to glue the mix. Set a moderate ratio and adjust the attack and release times to maintain punch and energy of the track, like a slow attack, fast release. Limiter. Finally, use a limiter to ensure the track is at a competitive loudness without clipping. Set the ceiling to minus 0.1 dB to prevent digital clipping. Additional tips: drum bus. Consider using a drum bus on your drum group before the mastering chain to add body character.
Say drum bus on the whole thing.
That's
okay.
Interesting.
Saturated
Full sense.
and yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's actually kind of close to what I use on my mastering chain, but it depends on the song. Sometimes I'm just straight.
Well, I was curious too about the order because I don't think I would have put EQ8 first.
I would put the glue compressor first, honestly.
Yeah. Well,
usually.
I think usually what I do is I always start with utility. And I just turn it down.
Okay.
A little bit. Like I just start there and then go from there.
No, I'm just kidding.
What's that?
You're one of those guys.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That makes sense though. Yeah. I mean, if you want to bring some headroom in. Yeah.
Yes, always. And I know you can do that with the EQ8 as well. I just, for some reason, I always have them. Yeah. But
you have a typical, I know you start from scratch, but as far as like your routing of your buses or groups into your mastering, do you have like a typical staging workflow that you like?
It's not too different from that, except for I do all the EQ8 on each channel. I guess I wouldn't do it on my master for the final output, but I would use multiband compressor on the master channel.
Me too.
And again, with saturating, like I've never thought to saturate the entire mix, but just by a little bit, you know? So that's not a bad suggestion. I'm going to check that out. I'm going to see if I like that.
Yeah, I use this chain that my friend, shout out Christian Rentz, uses, and it's honestly been a game changer for me, and it does use a combination of a couple of these different things. Yeah, I start with like a glue compressor, slowest attack, fastest release, and I just get it to like minus 2 or 3 on the kick, and then I get it's like 2 different OTT presets that are modified.
Okay.
And like lower ratios. So the ratio is like a 2 to 1 on each band, basically. So it's like not working too hard, but it does like tighten and brighten it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then I usually do like a EQ8, but I'll just go side mode and just roll off the sides to like 120 hertz.
Sure. Yeah.
And then some other stuff, and I usually clip at the end pretty hard.
Yeah.
Not super hard because it would sound bad, but
yeah, right.
Just a little clip is nice.
Just
But anyway, there's like a billion ways to do that, right? Like
there's no right or wrong answers.
No perfect answer there.
Yeah.
And people, if you don't know how to mix, you shouldn't worry about mastering at that point. That's how I feel.
And you could also do what I do, and that's go to somebody else's house and get them on it, because
dude.
I've worked with Rob for mixing. I've worked with Chase for mixing.
Nice.
I sometimes I just lose. I can't hear it for what it is. Bringing it to somebody else's house and letting them sort of squeeze it.
Fresh ears are nice when you've listened to it a billion times.
Yes.
Facts. Well, Brian, dude, thanks for hanging on the podcast, man.
Yeah.
I have to pee so bad, and I know that this guy probably has things to do over here. But where's the best place for people to connect with you online if they want to connect or say hi or follow?
Instagram.
Cool.
And that's where, if I'm doing any social media, it's there.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I don't care about Facebook anymore.
No.
It's kind of a waste of time.
I don't do Twitter. I don't.
My grandma and my mom use it, but I don't really do a Facebook anymore.
Yeah.
Can't do it. Too many platforms. But sweet. Cool, man. Well, thanks for joining the pod. I love your music. Love what you do. Everybody go check out Mux Mool and check out the links in the show notes. Yeah. Thanks for hanging out, man. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.